You're not going to be on the right side of history on this. You get that, right? I hope you get that.
Social transition in school, because social transition is the gateway drug.
My rights as an American citizen does not diminish one single bit because I am transgender. Because stopping us from expressing who we are is stopping us from being an American. Hello, and thank you for joining me. It's Brandy's World. Today, we are going to continue our look into the podcast titled Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle. And this podcast is brought to us by The Christian Post and hosted by Brandon Showalter. We are on episode 4 of season 1 of their podcast, A Nightmare, how transgender chaos is invading law and policy and threatening parental rights. Is it invading laws if laws are being written about you to try to push you out of society and into the margins? Is that invading laws? I don't see how that's invading laws. In 2023, more than 500 bills have been written in some way affecting transgender people. These bills written right here in the United States.
As we shared earlier in the series, Florida mom January Littlejohn has been locked in a legal battle with her school district after her daughter began to identify as a male and school officials allegedly shielded information from her and her husband. She shared the impact of that purported situation.
This is creating a huge wedge between parents and their children, and it certainly did that in my family. It was a year and a half of a nightmare I do not wish on anybody. We are continuing to go through.
Littlejohn and her...
Okay, if this is your first time joining me, you can go back to the first episode of Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle, where we encountered Miss January Littlejohn, and the interview of January Littlejohn was only with her, not with her child. It was just what January Littlejohn said about their child and what January Littlejohn felt and thought about the school policies where their child attended. So apparently we are going to hear again from January Littlejohn, and let's hear what January Littlejohn has to say.
Her attorney, Bernadette Broyles, have been deeply supportive of Florida's Parental Rights in Education Act, a piece of legislation that LGBTQ critics have donned the Don't Say Gay bill. Broyles explained the benefits of that law, which was signed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. While not a punishment for past behavior, it's a parental protectorate.
90-something% of this bill was all about was requiring that schools provide to parents the very same kind of information that was being withheld from the Littlejohns.
School policies, and this is what they're talking about. Many of these school policies are set up so when a child expresses their gender identity, they are not at risk of harm, both psychologically and or physically, at home or at school. So the school is not going to put that child in harm's way of abuse, and I think this is very good. I don't want children who go to public schools to be in harm's way of abuse at home or at school. There should be a link there. If the child should have a safe place to be at school, and they should also have protections at school if they're not safe at home. Does that make sense? Regardless of the abuse, psychological or physical, to a child. Do not blame the victim for child abuse. Protect the child from child abuse. Just because you agree with the abuser doesn't mean the abuser is correct. It means that you are turning a blind eye or in approval of abusing a child. Children should feel safe at school and at home. They should feel safe to express their identity.
would be required to provide parents information about their child's mental, physical, and emotional well-being. They were to make it explicitly clear that they are not entitled to withhold such information from parents. Now, school officials should have already recognized that based on the Parents' Bill of Rights, but apparently they were still recalcitrant, and so they needed additional legislation to make it unmistakably clear. There was one sentence that forbid the teaching of sexual orientation and gender identity as part of curriculum in K through third grades. One sentence out of a 7-page bill. The opponents have seized on that one sentence to lose their minds now and claim that it's some sort of discriminatory thing intent. What's very telling about the opponents is that the fact that they would have chosen that one sentence that forbids instructing a young child that they can be born in the wrong body.
The issue with trans people is we were assigned a gender box that our identity does not fit into. And you, society, people with your argument are telling us transgender people to not express that identity from within you. Instead, you should express an identity that was placed onto you. Do you see the difference? I am expressing my gender identity. I discovered it, and then I expressed it. I was expressing and performing a gender assignment that was given to me on day one, assigned to me on day one, based on day one sexual characteristics. So for nearly 4 decades, I was performing that. Society told me to be the best box A of gender that you can be, because in our society we have a binary system of gender. We use this binary labeling system to label everyone either box A or box B, and we have attributes that fit into box A and attributes that fit into box B. And if you do not fit into box A or fit into box B and those attributes, what are you to do? I was assigned box A and expected to perform and express all the attributes that are in box A. And I tried that for decades. And when I asked the honest questions of what my gender identity is, and I looked inside myself, and I discovered that my gender identity is not even close to all those attributes that I was trying to make myself fit into that box. I happen to fit nicely into our society's concept and construct of the box B of gender identity in our binary system. I'm fine with that. But my transition, why I'm a transgender woman, is because I am expressing and performing my gender identity. And when I perform and express it, it aligns. It aligns with the box B in our society. When I look into a social mirror, and when I look into the mirror on the wall, I reflect back something close to the inner identity I see in myself. And that is because I have had social affirmation. And as an adult, I've had physical reconstructions to help ease my gender dysphoria, facial feminization, breast augmentation, and a few other surgeries that have reduced my gender dysphoria. So I'm able to look in the social mirror and look into the mirror on my wall and see that inner Brandy, that inner me. And that is a beautiful thing. And that should be a right. I should have the right to identify myself and express it. At least attempt to express myself. Do you want laws that are going to make it illegal for myself and people like me to express my gender identity and other people like me to express their gender identity. And that does not seem American to me. That seems the opposite of the foundations of this country. This country should be where you can express you. Don't we tell our young children, when you grow up, you can be whoever you want to be if you work hard at it. America allows it. Do you tell your children that and also be proud of these laws that you say should stop us from expressing who we are? Because stopping us from expressing who we are is stopping us from being an American. I am an American citizen. Do not write bills and laws to try to impede on that fact or take away my rights. My rights as an American citizen does not diminish one single bit because I am transgender.
But their agenda really is about indoctrinating children in the ideology gender identity. And so I think that they're really outing themselves and how they're over the top mischaracterizing this legislation. It's an appropriate piece of legislation to ensure parents have the critical information they need to watch over their children while they're in schools.
January, as a parent who has faced these issues head on, what was your response to the law?
I was happy to see steps being taken to further solidify and protect parental rights in our school system. I don't think
Parental rights are not being taken away. Do you think the schools should protect those children from being abused, whether at school or at home? They should at least make an attempt, shouldn't they? This is frustrating. Come on, people.
this is going to be the end of what we see. And unfortunately, like Bernadette said, we shouldn't have even needed the Parent Bill of Rights or the Parental Rights in Education, because we are already afforded the right to direct the upbringing of our children by both the U.S. and our state constitution. But it's really going to come down, Brandon, to parents holding the schools accountable when their rights are violated. And that's really been a call to action for me for a very long time now, because we have a lack of courage in this country. And we have got to stand up and hold schools accountable when they break the law. Because if we don't, they will continue to do it.
Jeremy Carl agrees, noting that the situation transcends partisan politics.
That was pretty vague. Yeah, okay. If Party X breaks the law, they should be upheld to the law. Strong argument. Okay. But what you really want is to change those laws so abusers can get away with abusing children as long as they abuse them at home and in the manner you think is okay for those children to be abused.
And requires people to step up to the plate to defend children falling prey to this dangerous ideology.
To me, this is an issue that transcends partisanship or partisanism, to the point, if I could play a role in fixing this while scoring 0 political points, I would do that in a second, rather than kind of just use it as a political cudgel as much as it should be used, because it is, anybody who supports this politically, I think is really committing a terrible crime. Grabbing its 0 political points.
What is the it he is talking about that he don't think people should support? The it is what they call the transgender ideology or transgender movement. So what is transgender ideology and transgender movement? 2 things. Social equality and social normality. The equality is legal, the normality is social. Those 2 things I feel the transgender community deserves. Am I asking for too much? I don't think so. That is the movement. We want equality and we want normality. Okay, So let's hear how bad that movement is. And let's hear how bad it is that we have an ideology of existing and being part of society. Let's hear how bad that is.
About it and stop the kind of abomination that we're doing to our kids rather than get a bunch of political gains, but kids are still getting hurt by this. Even a lot of folks on the left are going to agree with us that these are bad, and I think that I'm happy to go build a coalition with anybody who's willing to do this. I really do think we can get some consensus on. We need to push for things that I don't think yet have a consensus, but I think we can build one.
Parents today are facing monumental challenges. In a case where policy and legal protections haven't been put in place, it's open season on the trans issue. I asked Jeremy Carl about the biggest barriers he believes parents today are facing.
I think one of the big dangers right now is that with a combination of not knowing what's going on always online, but at a second level, the fact that a lot of schools are within what they perceive to be their legal rights, they are kind of facilitating social and other types of transition at school without even alerting the parents. So I think that's a real danger. And again, unless you have legal prohibition, I think that's the problem. But you've got entire networks of people who feel they're empowered and feel they're empowered to act in the place of parents in a way that they
Act in the place of parents. We have lots of people in our society that we say they should act in the place of our parents. When the parent's not there, we think the school system should be watching after that child's best interest. When the parent's not there, we believe a hospital staff should be looking after that kid's best interest if that's where they are. If a child's not there, we believe a social worker should be acting in that child's best interest in place of the parent. We believe that our law enforcement should be acting in place of the parent when needed. We don't have these imaginary barriers that he's trying to draw for us and saying, oh, they're shattering these barriers. School's doing something that no other part of society is going to do. That is not correct. School is supposed to be protecting that child. And if protecting that child from abuse at home is not telling those people at home about the gender identity that is being expressed at school, then those parents are not going to be told that. I applaud the schools that are keeping those children safe by not exposing them to an abuser who's going to abuse them for expressing their gender identity. Do you think it's okay for someone to be abused because the abuse incident is about their gender identity expression? Do you think them expressing themselves is warranted for abuse? That's the loophole you're trying to create here. You're trying to create a loophole in our school system that is going to allow abusers to sidestep the protections of our schools for our children. That is sad. That is sad that you all are fighting for these protections to go away. Oh my goodness.
they really aren't. And so again, I think that's almost a societal change that we need to make in terms of teachers and school administrators understanding that their role is ultimately subordinate to that of parents in terms of a child's welfare.
Jeremy emphasized the importance, even before policy, of education and the targeting of social transitioning that often starts well before doctors come into the picture.
I think we need to push it by just getting the facts out there. Social transition in school, because social transition is the gateway drug that takes you there. And you give a kid who may be very confused, and I don't dispute, by the way, that
Did he just say that social affirmation is a gateway drug? Affirming a person's gender identity is a gateway drug to what? Gateway drug to what? being yourself, being able to express completely your identity, is that the ultimate drug? Oh, see what else this guy, he just said social affirmation is a gateway drug. Oh my, a gateway drug is an 80s term that they used for cannabis to say that cannabis users are, of course, they're going to become heroin users and crack users and cocaine users, and they're just going to be all the users once they open that gate. And cannabis is a gateway drug. Do you remember that Nancy Reagan argument? This guy's bringing up a Nancy Reagan argument and applying it to gender identity and gender affirmation. Let's hear what else this guy has to say.
So these kids are suffering and they are confused about identity, as many kids are, even at young ages. But when you allow them to socially transition at school for a couple of years, it kind of begins to put more and more pressure over time, kind of go down the medical path eventually. And so I think we just need to have a zero time.
The medical path. Yeah, because you may need some medical intervention. I'm going to let you all in a little secret. There's a thing that we call puberty that physically changes our body like no other time in our lifespan. This is a major part of being a hominid. We all go through a puberty, and this puberty is hormone driven. And if you do not align these hormones with your gender identity, you may need medical intervention in some cases. In my case, all the testosterone, the androgen-driven hormones that were being produced and pumped through my body, it never made me feel good. It made me feel awful. It was, when I finally was able to block and stop that androgen flowing into my system, and I was allowed my system to absorb some estrogen, it is wonderful. I needed medical intervention to get my hormone levels to be where they should be to make me feel like me. Okay? That is medical intervention. You don't want that to happen. I had surgical intervention because I did not have my puberty, my onset puberty that happened when I was a teenager, that was driven by that androgen rush that I got when I was like 15, 16 years old. When I got that rush, it started to change my body. It did not feel good. I did not know why at the time, but that was not stopped or blocked. So later in life, when I want to express me, I wanted to see me in that mirror on the wall and in the social mirror. It took some surgeries. If I would have blocked that initial androgen-driven puberty that I experienced as a teenager, I would not have had to go through most of the surgeries I went through. You can help transgender children prevent unwanted surgeries later in life by allowing them to suppress an unwanted puberty. So, affirmation leads to medical intervention? Probably. It probably leads to more affirmation. It probably leads to getting your expression, your gender expression, to more align with your gender identity. That is a good thing. It may take medical intervention, it may not.
It's on this anywhere that we can affect that sort of change, and I think that would be sort of where I'd go. But I'd first obviously start with areas where we can develop a transpartisan consensus, and then try to educate people about why we need to go. You
want a transpartisan consensus? Yeah, it's out there. The consensus is when we treat gender dysphoria, it helps transgender people. When you make it difficult to treat gender dysphoria. It makes it more difficult for transgender people. That we should all be on a consensus with. Do you really want to be on a consensus, or do you just want to loudly scream your opinion, whether it's right or not?
And further than that, to really keep our kids safe.
With many remaining either ill-informed or silent about the tragic circumstances befalling our children, Robin Lundstrom wonders what child victims will one day say about the adults who remained mute while such horrors unfolded.
I think how deep this goes and how insidious and how truly cruel this is to children, and how the long-term impact we are going to see.
It almost sounds like she's arguing my argument, right? It's so cruel to transgender children. Then I'm like, wait. She thinks it's cruel to cis children who are pretending to be trans children, who are forced to, I don't know what. I don't know what her argument is. I don't know how she thinks affirming a child is abuse. I don't understand that. Affirming your identity as abuse, I don't get that.
The impact of this on these kids. And one of these days, these kids are going to turn around and they're going to wonder where the adults were when all this was happening. And they're going to look back at the adults in their lives and wonder, why didn't you say no?
Representative Lundstrom also offered some advice for legislators who are horrified by the situation before us and are looking to do something about it.
I would encourage them to run the bill. And second, you have to look at the women's sports bill. That's being run in a number of states. I think it's up to 28 or 30 states now that have run the women's sports bill. And it is
A women's sports bill. That simply means transgender women shouldn't play sports. That's it. Transgender people are people, and people across all times and spaces play sports. It's human to play sports. To say that you should deny this human part of you is to say you should deny being part of human. Playing sport is human. All of our cultures do it. And you want to deny a group of people within your society of being part human. That part of our humanness. I play sports. I'm a senior. I'm in my 50s. I still competitively ride my bicycle. I competitively shoot pool. I play sports. Trans girls should be allowed to play sports. Quit denying them. You just want to deny the existence at every turn. And you feel this is the low-hanging fruit would be transgender women shouldn't be invading women's sports. Because right there, the language separates our womanhood. It separates me from being woman. And I deny that. I do not accept that premise. Your premise automatically excludes me from being woman? No. If you don't have a good premise to why I should be excluded from there, you don't start with your conclusion that I should not be excluded from women. I am a woman. I play sports. I play women's sports. It's not that difficult. You don't have the hard time with the trans women who play sports. You have the hard time with the trans women. You don't care that they play sports, follow women's sports. You care that they are women. That bothers you. And you want to take them down because you want to compare them to other athletes and say this comparison is not equal. Guess what? Compare any athlete to any other athlete. It's usually not fair. Physically, we're not all built the same. Some of us are not big, strong athletes, but some of us are. Some women are more physically able than other women. cis or not cis. And if you want to point out differences within a group and try to compare those two differences from inside group to outside group, it is a false comparison. It is a bad logical conclusion to do that. You shouldn't compare because you're going to find more differences within the set than you will from the set to the other set. Yeah, they just want to deny us sports because they think it's an easy target, because it's a hot target. And they don't care that they're denying us being part of being human. You're denying us a human thing. Playing sports is human across all cultures, all times, and all spaces. Ever since we have been human, we have been playing sport. We have been playing game. We have been learning and figuring ourselves out through sport and game. We've always done it. We always will do it. It's human. Quit denying that to us.
Has passed, and the Rights of Conscience bill has passed. We're making headway, and it's because we're running common sense good legislation. The SAFE Act is good legislation. It's an informed consent. Wait until the child is old enough to participate in their health care. What's the rush? What's the harm? The common sense is really where we need to hang our hats, so to speak. And
Yeah, you know what? Wait till the child's old enough, and if that's only talking about surgeries, I'm in your corner. Yeah, wait till that child is old enough to understand what surgery will do to their body. Yeah, I agree with that. Understanding that they have an identity and it does not align with the one assigned to them at birth, that does not take someone to be 18 or 21 or 25 or 42 in my case. Someone can understand that as a young child. When did you understand that you are the gender that you are? Or have you never questioned your gender identity? Do you just never question it? Do you expect no one else to question it? As a child, at what age do you expect them to question their handedness? That is another thing that is innate to within the self and can only be discovered by the self and can only be expressed by the self, right? Either you're left-handed or right-handed, which is a true dichotomy. It's a true binary, not like gender, which could easily be described on a spectrum. It would describe the diversity of our gender identities if we used a spectrum, but since we're using a binary labeling system, think of it like your handedness system. You are either left-handed or right-handed, regardless of which one you are assigned at birth. You can discover that and you can express that. You can do the same thing with your gender identity. It comes from the same source within you. It's you. It's the inner innate you that you can discover and identify, but you cannot change or control. You can express it. You can express your left-handedness. You can express your right-handedness, and you can express your gender identity. You can perform your left-handedness, and you can perform your right-handedness, and you can perform your gender identity. Gender identity is innate. Gender expression is how you express that. And if you even can express that, because apparently right here in the United States, there are people fighting hard to prevent people from expressing the discovery of their gender identity, expressing who they are. What if it was against your handedness? What if they didn't like your handedness? What if you're not allowed to express your handedness and forced to express the other handedness? You want to force people to express a binary they are not. And you want laws to protect you to do that. you're not going to be on the right side of history on this. You get that, right? I hope you get that. I hope that someday you're sitting around when you're old and going, wow, I really screwed up that. My grandchildren are going to read history and go, wow, my ancestor really screwed up that softball. So how hard could it be to affirm someone's identity and embrace them? Use empathy and understanding. That's all it would take. But you don't want to do that. And that's sad.
And running that bill may take once, it may take twice, but it does make a difference. And the women's sports bill in a couple of states been run a couple of times, and it's now in law. So we can't be discouraged. We need to be strong. We need to be courageous.
The policies extend well beyond the legislative chambers.
We don't need indoctrination. When you see your child's homework, pay attention. Demand excellence. We're the customer. We need to demand the quality of our education meet our standards. And school board elections, run good candidates. If you can't find a good candidate, you run. School board elections are pretty important. And we need to demand our school boards answer to us as the parents. We are the taxpayers, and we seem to forget that. And that's not something we need to forget. That's something we need to demand excellence.
You think that we're putting magic potions onto children and making them trans? You think we're putting an earworm into their brain and making them trans? You think we're asking them challenging questions that makes the brain fry and then suddenly rewire as trans? What do you think is going on? I'll let you in on a clue. It is looking within and discovering what that identity is. And the trans part, expressing it. That is not dangerous to society. And that's what you call the transgender ideology or the transgender movement. And that's what you're trying to stop children from doing. You're trying to stop them from asking themselves questions of who they are and then answering those questions. Why do you not want a child to ask and then answer a question about themselves? That's all it is. I'm not trying to trick children into anything. There's no getting tricked into your gender identity. You want them to express a gender identity that is not in aligned with them. Not just not to express their identity. You want them to express a different idea from their alignment, a different persona, a different expression. And that's what you want, right? That is not good. Okay, let's finish. I think they have a couple more minutes. Let's see what else they have to say in this episode. And here we go.
The incredible social difficulties of having a social transition and then maybe waking up. This is like a best case scenario, and having to move from that with all the confusion that can cause as an adolescent, maybe while all that's going on. So you're talking about really messing up potentially millions of young people for life in, various ways from the kind of...
So according to his logic, there may be some people who go through a transition and it just wasn't them. When they really looked inside, you know what, man, that's really not me. And then they have to start to express that's really in them and it's not aligned with what they were doing and it's confused. Yeah, I get that. That's probably way confusing. But the vast majority of people who begin a transition of moving their gender expression and their gender performance from, in my case, box A to box B, or from box B to box A. And when that is done with support and affirmation, it is highly successful for treating gender dysphoria. When you get your gender identity and your gender expression in alignment, your gender dysphoria goes away. And that's what we're treating, is gender dysphoria. We're not treating the inside of a person. We're treating the misalignment with the inside identity and the outside expression. And since Like, go try to change your handedness. You can't do it from the inside, can ya? You can't change that inside identity. So what you can do, express it. And you can use different tools to express that. Like, if you can get affirmation socially, oh my goodness, it starts to align, it starts to ease that gender dysphoria. And in some cases, you may need medical interventions such as surgeries. Most likely you're going to need some sort of hormone intervention, because our hormones are going to do things to our body that may not be comfortable in our pursuit of easing our gender dysphoria. So, yes, hormones probably a big part of treatment for gender dysphoria. Surgeries, sometimes, maybe, but not for everyone. Not everyone has surgeries. And there's not just a surgery for transgender people. There's different treatments depending on the treatment you need for your dysphoria. A slippery slope of becoming yourself. That's what they're arguing against. Existing as me, expressing me. They don't want that to happen. That's sad.
Changing policy begins by speaking up and educating others. These elements are deeply intertwined, with silence preventing legal protection.
I agree. That's why I'm doing this YouTube channel. I'm speaking up and informing others. Let's get some good, solid information out there. Not scary boogeymans around the corner and you better hide your children because they may become the boogie person. It's not a good thing. Okay, that's why I'm speaking up, because dangerous voices like yours. So yeah, kinda, I guess. Thank you for that advice, Brandon.
From ever taking form. At the end of the day, attorney Bernadette Broyles delivered a stirring and convicting call to action.
Here's the final thing. Someone wisely told me several months ago, Bernadette, whoever wants these children the most will have them. In the last number of years, gender ideological activists have wanted these children badly because they recognize that children are they're suggestionable. They lack the life experience to recognize when something is false and they're being manipulated. But I believe parents want their child more, and the more that they recognize that this is at the door, we need to communicate to school officials, they belong to us, we want them more, and you cannot have them.
Stay tuned next week for the final episode of Generation Indoctrination.
Oh my goodness. Her big strong message was Hansel and Gretel and the scary witch in the deep forest is not going to put them in an oven because they're my Hansel and Gretel, and if I let them out of my home, they're going to end up in an oven baked because a witch is trying to get them. I think that's what she was trying to tell us, right? Schools are going to get your children. They're going to educate them and make them into a citizen, and that's scary. They may even protect them from abusive parents. Whoa, scary schools. All right, goodness. Let's go ahead and wrap up another episode of Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle. Remember, love yourself, but more importantly, like yourself, and treat people the way they want to be treated. Bye-bye for now.